Proportional Response. Book 1. Chapter 13, Part 10. Savoring Dinner. Eldia gave Henry a slightly demure smile and allowed herself to be led to her seat, and took a moment to savor the food's aroma.
It smells heavenly. I look forward to trying it. I brought you something as well. Spent a bit of the afternoon baking it myself. Glunder is a sort of dessert pastry, and should go well following the meat, at the very least.
He helped her push her chair in, sat at the other side of the table, and began to pour wine as he answered.
It looks positively delightful. I hope you won't think less of this miniature feast when I tell you I had it prepared, rather than spending the afternoon preparing it myself.
He smiled at the jest upon himself, causing the cutest little lines to form at the corners of his eyes. She giggled in response.
Of course not, my dear man. You're frightfully busy, and I wouldn't expect you to cook yourself. I made the pastries because baking is something of a passing interest of mine, and I like to make things on special occasions, like when I have the chance to dine with a handsome and charming man.
His cheeks flushed again, and she laid a hand upon his. It warmed immediately under her touch. Got him. Now I know what Vashna's smile was about. I can't decide if I am going to hug her or box her ears. Or at least which to do first. Henry turned his hand to grasp hers as he replied.
I respect that. I never have learned to cook, not past the minimum required to survive in the field, never had the talent, nor, really, the interest. I do love good food though, so your ability to make something as terrific as that looks is...
He stared deep into her eyes, taking a moment longer than he had any right to before he continued.
Something I find quite commendable.
She gave him her best completely charmed grin, and brought her hand to her chin, coyly in order to show him the blush. He poured them both some wine and raised his glass. She answered with hers, and he toasted
to the start of something beautiful, and a beautiful woman.
A grin that threatened to split her face opened up unbidden as they tapped their glasses and took a drink.
Oh, you are a charmer, aren't you? Such a handsome man. I am sure you have beautiful women, aplenty available to you.
He chuckled.
Beautiful. Certainly. Smart, witty, vivacious, and able to hold her own in a fight. Sure, that too, but not all in one package.
He gave her that sly wink again, and the motion went through her eye and right down to her. Food, Eldia. Look at the food, concentrate on that. She wiggled her eyebrows at him and flashed that demure smile again, then bent over a little to take in the smell of the steak.
I have had some beef before, you know. That Texan who joined the Empire and guards my nephew. He made us some.
She did her best to imitate the man's speech.
Genuine Southern home cooking.
They both laughed, and she dug in. The taste of the meat and its spices exploded in her mouth, and she closed her eyes to savor it for a moment. When she came back to the room, she found Henry similarly enraptured.
I must say, Chef has completely outdone herself on this one. I may have to find a way to give her a raise.
She nodded and cut off another piece.
Yes, you must. I don't know what you are paying the woman, but it can't possibly be enough. I am going to have to send her some of these pastries in appreciation. I have never had anything like this. Don't tell the Texan I said that.
They both laughed again, and he answered.
So, is Erbol still letting him wear that massive hat all the time? Yes, he claims it is part of his indelible cultural heritage, which, within the Empire, can grant you nearly as much exception to the uniform codes as a religious exemption. Enibal thought about trying to push against it, but the massive thing seems to amuse Duchess Yoro. She is taken to wearing one occasionally, so Caslor told Enibal to let it be.
Henry chortled, presumably at the thought of the Duchess in one of those large hats.
Is she going to learn to ride horseback next? Actually, she is apparently an accomplished Blumel rider.
So the evening went. They covered people they both knew, people they thought the other might find interesting, then on to events, then ideas, and finally hopes and dreams. She already knew something of the plan, having been briefed initially by the Empress on its existence and having Enibal fill in a lot of the details, but Henry was able to give the idea such life. Eventually, they moved from the table to the couch in Henry's personal living space. She curled up next to him, and he set the vid screen to display a crackling wood fire. He poured her some more champagne and shared some chocolates that seemed to explode with flavor as they continued to talk. He knows the plan so intimately and passionately. Wait. She abruptly sat straight and stared him dead in the eyes.
Henry Thomason Archer, you are the author of this plan.
He flashed a smile at her and handed her another chocolate. She accepted the offering and popped it into her mouth, but continued to stare her challenge at him.
The author? No. An author? Well, I guess that would be fair. All humility aside, I had a lot to do with the formulation of the plan, and even more with the changes we have been making to keep up with events, and
concern and a somewhat haggard look finally crossed his face. He ran a hand down her cheek and then stood to pace a little.
In many ways, I am the person who has been entrusted with the plan, with seeing it carried out. It is a lot of work, and, again, all humility aside, I am uniquely qualified to make it happen, but...
He sighed, shook his head, spoke again.
No, but... I would be being dishonest with you and myself if I tried to say I didn't love this.
He gestured with his wine around the room and up at the ceiling.
Being at the center of history, guiding all of sapient life onto a better path, being the man with my finger on the pulse of the universe. Power is a hell of a drug, they say, and there are moments when things fall together, lives are saved, and bad guys are knocked back. Those moments make up for a lot. At the same time, there is a part of me, a small part, who wanted a simple life. Truth told, I expected to spend my life as an academic, trust fund baby, chronicling human history and event. It was all I ever wanted, to sit in the background, in safety, teach, and carry on a quiet little life. With a wife, few little hellions running around, the little house, picket fence, and all that. Instead, well,
he opened both hands to gesture around himself.
I am the man with the plan, somewhat literally. Still, one day the work will be done, and I will walk away from all of this. When I throw off the shackles of power, I will do so without regret, so long as I can leave them on capable hands, and will happily retire to my quiet little house to write memoirs and, maybe, teach at a university.
He sat heavily on the couch next to her, a semi-apologetic look on his face. He has stood, told me all this, even after he has been so cagey about so much of his life, and flat refused to tell me anything that would let me build a real timeline. He lets himself open and be vulnerable. And he looks apologetic. A surge of irritation welled up within her, then seemed to form into a tight little ball and go straight down between her legs to light a fire. This, of course, caused more irritation. No, not supposed to get aroused by irritation. Oh crap, he is about to start apologizing again. Do something. His lips quivered a little, and he stared into her eyes. She surged forwards, wrapped arms around his neck, and a white-hot electric flame fanned from her mouth to her toes as their lips met. The kiss lingered and lingered some more. She soon found herself straddling him, her hands twitching to start pulling at clothes. The fire in her body seemed to fuel her mind, and she finally found what about his statements bothered her. She slid off him, positioned herself to dangle along his side, and spoke quietly. So, the great human leader looks forward to the day when he won't have to work so hard, or carry the galaxy on his shoulders. She gave him a coy smile. Who among us doesn't, from time to time, find ourselves escaping into thoughts of life being different? That I can believe. However, you also claim a desire to retire to a quiet life with a nice home and a simple routine. She flashed her smile again, leaned up, gave him a brief kiss, separated from him just enough for her eyes to focus on his. She stared deep within those strange, nearly Venter, but so totally not, eyes and carefully caressed a single word. Bullshit. Henry started slightly, and she felt those hard, whipcord human muscles tense beneath her, then go slack. A whole series of expressions flashed across his face, but he seemed to settle for bemused curiosity as he raised an eyebrow in an invitation for her to explain. She quirked a half smile at him. Oh, I believe you want the nice, peaceful house, and that you will desire to live there a portion of the time. However, my dear, lovely man, if you believe that you will ever willingly stay more than 8 months a year there, and more than 3 months at a stretch, then I think you need to go on a retreat from all this,
and think about yourself some more. Yes, you will be free and relieved to put down the burdens, but you will also go stir crazy being so far from the action, and you know it. I expect that you will be taking a lot of regular vacations and visits to old friends all across sapient space, all the while coaching the many who will come to you for help to find solutions to their issues.
Henry chuckled. Not the light sound she'd heard from him so many times, but a deep bassado rumble that seemed to come from deep within. He took a sip of his wine and looked away from her.
You are such a marvelous woman, able to see right through my crap and reach to the heart of my own misgivings about what I consider as my goal, and help me see what I really want.
He turned back to face her and had a look of mock severity on his face.
Not that there isn't a certain amount of projection in all of that. Admit it, you'd never be happy living all of your days out in quiet semi-obscurity, resting on your laurels.
She smiled, leaned into him, put her nose at the nape of his neck, and inhaled deeply. His musky scent was so different from Ventamen, tangy, sharp, with hints of flint and steel. At the same time, a stronger smell of soap than she ever got from even the most obsessively clean man of her own kind. Almost as if Henry was trying to wash away the primal nature of his musk. She moved to straddle his lap again, put her hands on her shoulders, and stared him dead in the eye. Those eyes, deep dark pools full of twists and turns, and beneath them, a death-world animal paced, ready at any moment. She slowed the heaving of her chest. No, not tonight. If we tumbled tonight, it would be him claiming me, and then it could too easily be just tonight. The sure knowledge of her intention, of the decision she had finalized in the last few hours as they spoke of their dreams, settled around her like a warm blanket. You are mine, Henry Archer. Now I just have to wait until you realize that before we claim each other. She gave him a coy smile, a semi-chaste kiss, and answered,
Oh, I have to admit nothing, my darling. I'm not the one who claimed I wished to retire to the quiet life.
She giggled as he gave her a sharp look.
I have always known, that I will never be a mild-mannered, quiet woman. When I am old and in my dotage, I intend for people to see me coming and say, Oh shit, what is she up to now? Not, oh, it's that sweet old lady. Part of my challenge in finding a man is finding one who wasn't looking to tame me, and part of it was finding one who wouldn't be tamed.
She put her hands on his cheeks, then, and drew him to her. The kiss seemed to light the room, and she saw stars. They sat there, kissing, touching, holding, caressing. At some point, they fell sideways onto the couch, then onto the floor. Henry finally reached for the buttons on her blouse, and she moved, quickly, but gently, to stop him. His head came up abruptly, and a cluster of emotions danced in his eyes. Irritation, question, fear of offense, rejection, and, most of all, questions. But he did stop. She gently kissed his fingertips and gave him that coy smile again.
This is our first date, you lovely, intoxicating, beautiful man. I want this.
She bucked her hips slightly and felt his body respond, and hers respond as well. Her hand became weak, and she almost let go as his hand moved towards her blouse again. No, woman, no. Anticipation drew him out.
Believe me, I want it so bad I can taste it. But I want you more. All of you, who you are, what you are, and I don't want our first time to be about carnal pleasure. I want it to be about us, about something real.
Henry's hand pulled from her, ran down her side, and settled on her hip. He came up on one elbow and put that hand behind her head, moved her head to stare deep into her eyes.
Love. You want it to be about love, something strong and deep, not just the chemistry, rapport, and discovery we feel now.
Her words left her, and she realized she'd never felt so vulnerable in her life. She looked into his eyes and saw the same vulnerability there. All she could do was purse her lips and give him a meek nod as a single tear rolled down her cheek. His mouth opened to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he brought his hand from her hip to catch that tear on his finger, then brought it to his lips. He then laid down beside her, her head on his arm, and his hand draped across her. They did not speak. She thought about delving into the one subject that they had avoided the whole night, the subject of their pasts, but that was for another time. How long they lay there, breathing matched and promises of the heart passing back and forth in silence. She did not know, but the halls were empty when her guards escorted her home.